Hey everyone, this is Lomi, and today I've got something special to share that has come all the way from Australia. You've already seen the video thumbnail, so I won't try to be secretive about it. It's the special arm that came with Fairyland's Feeple65 Chloe as part of the special winter event the company held in 2010 to go along with the doll's release. So these were produced in pretty limited numbers, and I wasn't sure I'd ever get one. Oh my goodness, I was not expecting that. I cried. Look at this beautiful artwork she sent along with the parts. Sarah, thank you so much. I'm going to hang this above my workshop desk. So yeah, if it wasn't already obvious and that wasn't a dead giveaway, this is a special extra part for All, my Feeple65 Chloe. I've always loved the idea of having one, since it's covered with magic symbols and swirls that look like magic. I admit it doesn't quite make sense within my story canon, because in my stories, magic isn't really visible, just its effects are. But that's impossible to portray in photos, so I figured a little fudging and adding in magic swirls and lights was okay purely for aesthetic purposes. It's a little easier with Rune because his power does manifest visibly. That's why his eyes glow. But that's one of the differences between their magic that they have to address and overcome in the stories, so I won't get into that too much right now. All of these pieces were so beautifully packed. Even though they had a long trip, they arrived safe and perfect. But these pieces have never been painted, and you can probably tell, because the magnets aren't glued in, and most of the pieces still have the pour tabs attached from when it was first made 8 years ago. I have to admit this is the first time I've seen pour tabs on doll parts, but I'm sure it won't be the last. Either everyone's parts were sent this way, or this one was just missed. Accidents happen. So let's get to the core purpose of this video, showing you how to remove pour tabs if you ever encounter a doll that still has them. Fortunately, her hand and wrist don't have any tabs on them, which is why I feel like it was probably just missed on this arm. The tabs were trimmed close, but not finished, so it was probably easy to miss. Though I've never dealt with pour tabs on dolls, I have helped a friend prep resin garage kits for assembly before, so they aren't new or intimidating to me. I'll grab a couple of my favorite tools for tab removal and try to show what each of them is used for. I'll be using an X-Acto knife, my cordless Dremel and some sanding bits, as well as some round cutting bits. I'll also be using some small wire cutters, which are great for pinching off big chunks of resin. I'll use sandpaper in 150 and 600 grits, and a nail sanding block from a beauty supply store. Most importantly, I'll be wearing my respirator. Resin dust and fumes are both very toxic, so it's important to make sure you never inhale any of the dust created by sanding or modifying dolls. My mask uses replaceable cartridges, which can be stored in airtight plastic bags to prolong their life. Always wear NIOSH-approved OVP95 respiratory protection when using sealants or sanding dolls. Since I'm working indoors, I lay down a cloth beneath my workspace. This will catch the dust and bits that come off the resin while I'm working, so I can fold it up and take it outside to wash. So here are the tabs. I'll get started with the upper arm, using my wire cutters to trim it down and cut out the thick chunk of resin at the top of the string channel. You can see this works more by crushing than cutting. It's also prone to causing resin to snap, which can be great for quickly cleaning out spots like this string channel, but you wouldn't want to use this on delicate pieces. So once the big chunks are crushed off, I switch to my knife. You have to be really careful using a craft knife for this because it's so easy to cut yourself. Go slow and try to cut by shaving off small slivers at a time instead of trying to cut deep. This gives you much better control over the end result. Normally you'd want to remove tabs or seam lines immediately after receiving a doll, because no matter what you do, dolls will always yellow or mellow over time. These parts are 8 years old, so there will probably be a pretty substantial color difference where the tabs were once they're sanded off. Once the tab area is as even as I can get it with the knife, I switch to 150 grit sandpaper and sand down the cut marks with a circular motion. I try to keep the sanded area to a minimum to prevent too much discoloration. Once that's nice and smooth, I finish with 600 grit sandpaper to remove the sanding marks. Some people like finer papers than this, but 600 is the finest I go on dolls because at this point the sanding marks are not visible, and any finer grit than 600 tends to make the resin shiny. After it's done, running my fingers over the cut and sanded area will show if there are any more rough spots remaining for me to remove. If you don't like dealing with sandpaper, or if it's hard for you to hold, the sanding block works just as well, and it's easy to hold onto. The different sides are different grits, so start with the coarsest side and work your way down. I avoid the polishing side though, for obvious reasons. There we go, first part done. There is a pretty big color difference where the tabs are removed. The resin underneath hasn't oxidized, so it's still very pink. So keeping your sanding area small is an important part of working on older dolls like this one. The other thing to look out for is making sure you keep your sanding and trimming fitted to the contours of the piece. Over-sanding can leave flat spots behind, and you don't want that either. While you can use sanding exclusively to remove small tabs, you can see it would take a lot of time to do it that way. That's why I prefer to start with cutting and trimming, and then finish with sanding by hand. Using a rotary tool like a Dremel can be a great time saver, but when using it, it's important to be very sure you're following the shape of your piece and not flattening the area you're working on. Then you would just finish by hand as usual. This piece is a little smaller, so I trim the tab out of the channel with the wire cutters and knife. Then I'll use the Dremel so you can see how fast you can pare down a tab with the rotary tool. With just a few touches, it's almost gone. But this piece has a lot of curve to it, so I take it down until it's just a small ridge. Then I trim the rest with the knife. Fortunately, these tabs are pretty small, and they're well placed inside areas that will usually be hidden inside a joint, so I don't think the color difference will show. If you're working on joints, checking the fit can be a great way to make sure you've removed everything necessary for your doll to have full range of motion. It should move smoothly, with no bumps or catches. Now for the hardest one. This poor tab is actually inside the wrist, against a really delicate lip of resin. I don't have room to really get in there and cut it or carve it out, so it's time to use cutting bits, but I have to get them open first. I'll start by sanding the exposed portion of the tab down so it's level with the rest of her wrist. That doesn't take long at all. Then I switch to the cutting burr and dig in. I keep my Dremel on low speed for this whole process, as that makes it easier to control. I have really shaky hands, so this helps ensure I don't damage anything in this delicate spot. I carve away the rest of the tab a little at a time. The rounded shape of the bit I'm using does a lot of the work for me here. Using the right tool can save a lot of time and effort. The biggest challenge is just keeping the resin dust out of the way so I can see what I'm doing. Once the whole tab has been removed from the inside, I smooth the edge of the wrist with a knife, then sand it down using the sanding block. I smooth the inside of the wrist with my 150 grit sandpaper, smooth things out a little more with the sanding block, and then I'll finish with the 600 grit sandpaper. There, super smooth. You'd never know it was there. I checked the wrist for fit and now it's good to go. These parts are ready for painting. The only catch is, I don't know what color to make these marks. Since Faral's magic isn't visible, I've never associated it with a color. She's a healer, but I don't know if I have a color I associate with healing either. What do you think? Drop me a comment below and let me know what color you think I should use to paint these parts. Hopefully I'll be able to get to them soon. That's all for today though. Thanks for watching. Bye.